Tape Deck Media.
Welcome to Line by Line, Romeo and Juliet, a Ruddle Me This podcast mini-series. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be bringing on actors, comedians, and other people that are knowledgeable about the bard himself, William Shakespeare. Each episode, I'm going to bring on a different guest, and we're going to go through the play line by line, and the guest is going to explain to me the bits of the language or add context here and there, basically just explain to me whenever I get stuck. I don't know how many episodes there are going to be of this. We're basically just going to see how far through the play we can get in the 40-minute Zoom time limit and go from there. So sit back, relax, and let's enjoy the show. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Taylor. Thanks for having me.
It's great to talk to you face to face. Let's just give a quick a quick setting of what you are currently in Thailand. You said you're next to a freeway or something, so there might be some traffic noise.
Not quite a freeway, but it's a busy street. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. And so we had a little bit of a mix up with the time. It's currently 10 p.m. here in New Zealand, and it's only 4 o'clock there.
Yeah, we don't change the time for daylight savings here.
Oh, I hate that so much.
Yeah,
we booked it in, and then the time changed. Anyway, delightful for you to be
so
here.
On top of things, you told me what time it would be in both places. I'm like, this guy knows what's up.
And then I got it wrong. No, well, it's delightful to have you with us. So let's get through this. So the prologue. Would you like to read the first line or the first sort of paragraph by the chorus, or would you like me to do that?
I guess I would.
Yeah, please. I guess just a quick recap since the last episode. I think we had Romeo and Juliet just met each other. They just learnt who each other are, and the nurse seemed to be trying to dissuade Juliet from kind of pursuing it any further. So we're going to start Act 2 now. The prologue of Act 2, enter the chorus, and if you'll take it away.
Okay. Now old desire doth in his deathbed lie, and young affection gapes to be his heir. That fair for which love groaned for and would die, with tender Juliet matched, is now not fair.
I'll do some of them if you like. So now Romeo is beloved and loves again, alike bewitched by the charms of looks, but to his foe supposed he must complain, and she still loves sweet bait from fearful hooks.
Being held a foe, he may not have access to breathe such vows as lovers used to swear. And she is much in love, her means much less, to meet her new beloved anywhere.
But passion lends them... Go ahead. With passion lends them power, times to meet, tempering extremities with extreme sweet. So that was basically just catching up on what's happened, kind of pointing out the despair, I suppose. Is there anything in there that jumps out to you that's kind of like just you want to talk about it all?
Let's see. I mean, it is just a recap of where we are now, and that's one thing that you'll notice about the prologues in general is there's no surprises in this play.
That's right.
Like Shakespeare tells you what's going to happen, and then it happens.
Yes, that was I think the first thing that my expert pointed out. Is she said the first thing he says is about let young lovers take their lives. So yeah, he's really signposting it.
Yeah, it's literally the prologue for Act 1. It says, "And they die at the end."
Yeah. Okay. So scene 1. A lane by the wall of Capulet's orchard. So you said this just before we started recording, that we are basically about to hit the most famous scene of this play. The balcony scene, I think was what you said, right?
Yeah. So we're on Act 2, Scene 1, but Act 2, Scene 2 is that balcony scene. Yeah.
That's right. Okay,
I'm
so would you like to
get to that? But I'm worried that since it's the world's most famous theatrical scene, and I am not the world's foremost theatrical expert.
But that's okay. I think you basically said it's good enough to talk about twice, so we might really get into it in another. So would
That
you
is
like to play
true, yeah.
Romeo in this reading here?
Okay, yeah. So, see, this scene actually contains a monologue I used to audition
Oh
many,
yeah.
many years ago by Mercutio, who
Oh, so
is,
maybe
I don't know if many people know this, but for actors, Mercutio is often a preferred part over Romeo.
really.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So Romeo's very dramatic,
He
kind of
sure is.
he's kind of a drama queen,
He is.
and he's kind of like a two note kind of guy. He's got overwhelming love and overwhelming despair.
He has two settings. Yeah. Okay.
Mercutio, however, has a great range.
He does.
He's brave. He's funny. He's caring. He's a really really cool character.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so maybe I'll be Romeo and Benvolio, and you can play Mercutio. Does that sound good?
Okay, sure. Have you
Okay.
discussed
So
Benvolio's name, by the way?
no, we haven't.
To me, it's a pretty funny name. It's a very silly name.
How so?
Um, Maybe it really was people's names back then,
Right.
but if you look at Shakespeare's plays that take place in Italy, there's a lot of common themes, and he reuses a lot of the same names.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may be familiar with the character Malvolio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Malvolio and Benvolio are just funny ways of saying in Italian, uh, good-willed and ill-willed.
Oh, yeah. Of course it is, isn't it?
And it's kind of silly to name someone that, if you
Yeah.
ask me.
Yeah. I now that you've pointed it out, it is very obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. And,
Fascinating.
and, and what is Benvolio? What part does he play in this? He's the guy who means well,
Yeah, he's a
for
great guy.
everyone. He's a
Yeah.
good guy, yeah.
Oh, that's great. I wondered this the other day as I was sort of driving around. I thought the name Romeo, uh, does it have any ties to the word romance, or is it kind of just it sounds kind of linguistically similar, so we can't. And then, like you say, because he has two modes, he has despair and he has love. We sort of associate the name Romeo with like a sort of romantic guy. Do you have any sort of context about that you know of?
No, but it's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I think it's just a standard Italian name, but
True.
maybe there is
Yeah.
a connection there.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll read a little bit of Romeo. So, can I go forward when thy heart is here? Turn back, dull earth, and find thy centre out. He climbs the wall and leaps down within it. Enter Benvolio and Mercutio. So then Benvolio says, Romeo, my cousin Romeo.
And on my life he is wise, and on my life has stolen him home to bed.
So what does that mean? Is he saying Romeo's gone home?
Uh, yeah, that's what he's assuming. Yeah,
Oh, so Romeo snuck away from the other two.
yeah. So he's saying like, and on my life,
Okay.
he's like, I bet my life that this is what he did.
Aha.
Has stolen him home to bed because he's got unrequited love, so he probably doesn't want to go and hang out with the guys like he should if he's a good guy.
uh-huh.
He just went there with hopes of seeing Rosalind at the party, and since they're not together as a result of the party, well, screw this, I'm going home and crying myself to sleep.
Oh, so they actually don't know that he's ran into Juliet, do they?
No, they don't. And Mercutio is
Interesting.
being very harsh with Romeo. I mean, the way a friend would,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then Benvolio says, he ran this way and leaped this orchard wall. Good call, Mercutio.
Call good Mercutio.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah, call, good Mercutio.
Nay, I'll conjure too. Romeo, humors, madman, passion, lover. Appear thou in the likeness of a sigh. Speak but one rhyme, and I am satisfied. Cry but ay me. Pronounce but love and dove. Speak to my gossip Venus one fair word, one nickname for her purblind son and heir, young Abraham Cupid, he that shot so true when King Cophetua loved the beggar maid. He heareth not, he stirreth not, he moveth not. The ape is dead, and I must conjure him. I conjure thee by Rosaline's bright eyes, by her high forehead and her scarlet lip, by her fine foot, straight leg, and quivering thigh, and the domains that there adjacent lie, that in thy likeness thou appear to us.
Wow. Was that the audition, the one that you used to audition with?
That was it, yeah.
Oh, well, it's very well done. So what is he actually kind of saying here? Like, is he's obviously sort of getting into the, Mercutio, he's got a flair for the dramatic. He likes to kind of, go on a little bit. Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit as to what he's actually kind of saying.
Okay, well, once I explain it to you, you will understand it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Mercutio is, as you're saying, he's very playful and dramatic, and what he's doing here is he is mocking the popular form of entertainment of the times.
Oh.
Since that form of entertainment no longer exists, you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
So, back in the day, there weren't many forms of entertainment. There was, giving blind people clubs and letting them hit each other.
Was that a real thing?
Oh, yeah, that was a real thing, absolutely.
Oh my God.
And then there's what Mercutio is mocking here. Now, mind you, theater, of course, was present, but theater was generally for the upper classes. What Mercutio is mocking, I don't know the exact historical name for it, but I call it a monkey show.
Okay, yeah.
And monkey shows actually do still exist.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not common anymore.
Right.
But they do happen. And what it is there's a guy who's got trained monkeys that he's taught to be in his shows. And they do jokes and magic tricks with the monkeys.
Right.
And that's what Mercutio is imitating.
Wow.
And
so it's kind of,
when a monkey,
it's a very sort of over the top kind of. Is this sort of like a narrator talking over these monkeys doing the tricks?
Well, so he's the showman. So like how if you can imagine a very verbose, very bigger than life musician, right? Magician.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell. I don't work in the English language every day anymore.
Let alone Shakespeare English.
But if you can imagine a magician who's like, and now, ladies and gentlemen, very over the top. That's what they were like, because they were at these fairs and festivals that were just full of people who were, all kinds of things are going on at these festivities. They got to be heard. They got to attract a crowd.
Yeah.
And so when he says, nay, I'll conjure too, and then Benvolio tells him to call good Mercutio, call for Romeo, call out his name or whatever, right? And he goes, nay, I'll conjure too. And then he yells Romeo. Then he's calling out exactly what Benvolio just said to do, which he responded to by saying, no, I won't do that. And then he does it anyway. That's kind of confusing if you don't understand the context, right?
Yeah.
Which is conjuring is what the speaker does when the monkey is disappeared through a magic trick or is playing dead. He's conjuring it out of thin air, supposedly, which Like, obviously, no, he isn't, but it's a more fun way to approach the situation for Mercutio this
Yeah.
way.
I'm
And so
I'm
he's like,
trying I'm trying to
yeah.
think of a modern sort of, would it almost be like when sometimes you'll see television shows, they'll parody the sort of dialogue you see in one of those, like The Days of Our Lives, or one of those kind of soap opera. Is it kind of like that? It's a format that everybody's familiar with at the time,
Oh, yes, it's
and
absolutely a
he's
parody.
yeah. Okay, I'm
Everyone
with
who
you.
was watching this play back in the day would instantly, as soon as he says, nay, I'll conjure too,
They would have been like, "Yep, there's the line,
they know
conjure."
it's a conjuration.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And then he starts, doing an over the top, instead of conjuring an ape, he's conjuring his friend Romeo, which is just ridiculous.
He does even say ape in there, doesn't he? The ape is dead, and I must conjure him.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly. Which is a great metaphor too in that situation, but it's
Yeah.
also just on the surface, it's a reference to an ape.
Wow. That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there
And
anything
and
else
so
from that
that
jumps
first
out?
line, Romeo's humors, madman, passion lover. That's just all ways of trying to entreat him out of the ether into
Yeah.
like a solid state of existence.
Like he's almost like shaking, when you shake cat biscuits to make your cat appear out of where they're hiding from.
That's exactly what I was not thinking, but sure, that works. Yeah,
Yeah. If it works, it works.
yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Is there
Now,
anything else in there that
interestingly,
jumps
this
out at you?
this word, I'm gonna focus on this word first. So
Mhm.
still on the same line, Romeo, humors, madman, passion, lover. So humors, humors is not what we think of today as humorous, being in good humor, a tendency towards joke telling. That's not what humors means.
Mm,
Um, the humors are phlegm, blood, yellow bile, and black bile.
that's right.
Yeah. And they are associated with emotions. And
Ah,
so, madman, that's lunacy, and passion, those are connected to the humors. Those are the humors he's calling on when he's calling out Romeo.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
And so, appear thou in the likeness of a sigh. I think that one's, straightforward.
Yeah,
In the likeness is like today we would say like in the flesh.
yeah, yeah,
But instead of appearing in his own likeness, which is how someone should appear,
yeah.
if they're appearing in the flesh, they're appearing in thy likeness, in their own likeness. No, he's asking him to appear in the likeness of a sigh,
Like a whiff of cloud
which
kind of
isn't
thing.
visible in the first place. So to appear in the
No.
likeness of one is just a very hilarious concept.
Yeah.
Instead of appearing as yourself, appear as you're whining, you know?
Yeah. A sigh is very fitting for Romeo.
Yeah. And he says, speak but one rhyme, and I am satisfied. Um, cry but I me, pronounce but love and dove. He's mocking Romeo for waxing poetic about Rosalind all
Yeah.
the time. He's saying,
Uh-huh.
like, your rhymes about Rosalind are how you exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Sweet.
yeah, and then speak to my gossip Venus one fair word. Um, Venus, of course, is the goddess of love.
Mm-hmm.
One nickname for her pureblind son and heir, young Abraham Cupid. I saw it. I don't know what version of the script I got. I've seen some words that were not exactly the same as other versions, which
Yeah.
it's really cool that happens sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in fact,
The, yeah.
it like the folios sometimes would use like different words. Even Shakespeare's own writings he would sometimes use a different word in different versions.
Wow. Oh
Um,
man.
but so Abraham Cupid is also known as Adam Cupid.
Yeah, that's the version I've got in front of me
Yeah,
here. It says Adam Cupid. Yeah.
yeah, and that's just Cupid.
Yeah.
That's Venus's. That's the goddess of love's son. That's Cupid. That makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and he's pure blind, meaning he was born blind. He didn't go blind. He never had sight his whole life.
Wow.
And that's because love is blind, of course, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I forget the exact mythology behind this, but there's something about giving Cupid a nickname is supposed to be able to remove his curse or something like that.
Mm.
So
So
this is
that's
a very specific reference.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I think we would his first kind of monologue he does where he describes Queen Mab's carriage and everything at the start. I think again there was it was a real deep cut of a reference. It was talking about a creature that braids the tail hairs of horses or something, and that's like a very subtle, some kind of fey creature, like calling card of that. And like you say, at the time they would have all known, oh yeah, that's a whatever it was. And
yeah.
like you say, they would have all known this Cupid. You can give him a nickname, and by break his curse, you mean be free from like being in love with someone, right?
I don't recall the exact mythology behind it, but there's
Yeah.
something very important about nicknaming Cupid. Yeah,
Hmm. Right.
and I think what it is it's very it's like a metaphor for how love really is in life. Why is Cupid blind? Well, because love is blind. If you're able to name it, that means you're able to define it and give it boundaries.
Yeah.
And then King Cophetua loving the beggar maid, that's just, part of mythology, of course. I think that's
Yep.
clear that, a king fell in love with a very, very low class person
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Cupid. Yeah. And right there would be a big pause, like a really
Uh-huh.
pregnant pause. In theater, we like to call it a pregnant pause.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Or at least maybe just I like to call it that. I don't know. But
No, I've definitely heard of a pregnant pause before. Yeah.
yeah, and that's and we know that because the next line is he heareth not.
Mm.
Now, if you recall back to the ape conjuring, this is
Oh yeah,
some this is
the
some
monkeys.
showman. He's mocking a showman at a festival grounds who's trying to
Uh
draw
huh.
a crowd.
Yeah.
So it's got to be with great suspense, like he heareth not, setting the tone. And as
Mm-hmm.
he
Yeah.
stirreth not, he moveth not. And those are all proof that the ape must in fact be dead.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Now, of course, anyone who sees these ape shows or monkey shows, they know what they involve so that they know
Mm-hmm.
it's a trained ape that's playing dead, but they go
Yeah.
along with it. They totally
Mm.
go along with it. That's the how the entertainment works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's the ape is dead, and I must conjure him. This is going back to the humor because, like, if a joke works, milk it, do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to remember there weren't a lot of forms of entertainment back then, so this is going
No.
to get a real rise out of the crowd.
Right.
So as soon as he goes back to and I must conjure him, the crowd's going to erupt. They're going to be like, "Ha again, do it
The
again!"
callback.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And so it's then, I conjure thee by Rosaline's bright eyes, her high forehead and her scarlet lip, her fine foot, straight leg, quivering thigh. Of course, this is getting into the body,
Yeah.
Bawdy, but it's also Body. It's getting into both. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. He was
and
getting a
it's
little
clear that,
saucy.
yeah, it's clear. And this is why it's divided into two conjurations, is because
Mm-hmm.
they're very different the way the two are done. The first one was just like a straight up mocking of Romeo
Yeah.
and comparing him to this like likeness of love rather than of a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But now he's making sexual innuendos.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's two very different things.
Because I think
And
the way they were sort of not necessarily teasing him, but the way they were trying to get him out of this like love sickness is they're kind of saying like she looks good, but you just haven't been looking at anyone else. So like, are they sort of is he sort of implying here that you're just a horny 15-year-old like you're not really in love, that kind of thing?
I mean that's part of it, but it
Uh-huh.
doesn't go quite that deep. Mercutio is also very young. I think he does believe that Romeo is in love, but Mercutio
Oh,
also
okay.
doesn't have a good grasp of what love is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
young too, you know,
Yeah. That makes sense.
and he's more, I think, making fun of Romeo because they're friends, and that's what friends do. Like, oh, you big sap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're so in love, but I know it's really about her quivering thigh and the domains that they're gazing eye.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah, and then that in thy likeness. See, now he says thy likeness as opposed to the likeness of a sigh, right?
Ah,
And
yeah, he
it's
did change that.
and I think that's because he's talking about the body, the corporeal, that the reference to Romeo is now also the corporeal. Um,
Yeah.
it's in thy likeness thou appear to us. And it's very funny, I think, that he goes straight from the can I say the word for female anatomy on this?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay. Okay, before I do, when you talk about somebody's likeness,
Uh-huh.
although you're talking about what you see when you see them, you're usually specifically referencing their face.
Yep.
Because other parts of people are all, pretty much the same, right?
Right.
Um, so I think it's hilarious. And I'm sure, the Elizabethan audiences would agree with me that he goes straight from Rosalind's vagina to Romeo's face.
I think I've been called something similar in the past before.
Right?
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
And it's
from
like, and the
line.
quivering thigh and the domains that they're adjacent lie, that in thy likeness thou appear to us. And some people will probably get the imagery in their minds of him coming out of there or whatever,
Yeah, okay.
whether head
Wow.
first or whether only his face was in there to begin with. That's up to the person creating the imagery in their mind. But
It's
this
all up
is
to
like
them.
a very naughty, like Mercutio makes very naughty jokes. There's a lot of naughty jokes in Shakespeare.
Yeah, you're right. Wow. I knew it was, I thought he was just alluding to it, but now that you pointed out, that's quite dirty.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so the next line is from Benvolio, and he says, "And if he hear thee, thou wilt anger him."
Yeah, I think that's straightforward. That's
Okay,
Benvolio
yeah,
wishing well for everyone.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
like,
Come on,
"Oh,
man,
don't
don't,
hurt his
yeah,
feelings, man.
yep. Just the good guy Benvolio.
Mercutio's just like, this cannot anger him. Twould anger him to raise a spirit in his mistress's circle of some strange nature, letting it there stand till she had laid it and conjured it down. Um, so this is, I think, a triple entendre.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's he's saying, like making fun. Well, first he says, making fun of Romeo about being in love isn't going to piss him off. It consumes him. He knows it's true.
Yeah,
It's all he thinks about. Like, he would hardly hear me. He's just hearing his own thoughts about love.
yeah.
Um, 'Twould anger him to raise a spirit in his mistress's circle. So that's a double entendre. No, maybe triple.
Circle as
Because
in.
a circle can be a hole,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And I think we know which one that is.
The
But
one he was talking about just before.
no, so the circle is both referring to Rosalind's immediate, sphere around her or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but it also refers to a circle drawn in the dirt by a conjurer for magical purposes.
Uh-huh.
And to raise a spirit in his mistress's circle, Mercutio is saying two things. Like, we can make fun of him all we want. We're not doing it in front of Rosalind. He's not going to care. But he's also saying, a spirit of some strange nature, uh, to raise a spirit. Yes, you raise from the dead, but you also raise from a flaccid state.
Ah, of course. Yes, raise. Yep. Another
And
one.
so that spirit isn't a spirit of the dead, it's a spirit of lust.
Yep. Okay.
And like, so one interpretation of this would be like, only thing what would make him mad, and mad, of course, oh, sorry, it would anger him.
Yeah.
But that is associated with mad. And so there's a
Oh,
anger.
okay. Yeah.
It includes an element of like just craziness, right?
Yep.
Anger, aggravate him or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
anger him to raise a spirit in his Mr. Circle, that could mean like, what'll aggravate him is if he gets harder on Rosalind.
Yeah.
Of some strange nature. That could be referring to the undead, but it
Yeah.
could also just be a joke of some strange nature. Ooh, I wonder what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like kids back then probably made jokes like, "Are you raising the dead?" Are you erecting a monument?
Yeah. Are you just happy
Stuff
to
like
see me, or are
that.
you raising the dead?
Um, and uh, and letting it there stand till she had laid it and conjured it down.
Oh.
So if this wasn't sexual, why would she be the one to bring it back down and not him? So it's
Yeah.
clearly a sexual pun.
Right. Laid it down. Conjured it down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that were some spite saying, oh, sorry. Another interpretation of this would be the obvious one, the one that he is clearly saying that's on the surface is what he's saying is what would anger him is if like I conjured a demon to have sex with Rosalind.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. That he
Which is
wouldn't like
kind
that
of
at
a
all.
stupid thing to say if you don't consider that it's also a double entendre about
Yeah.
Romeo and his parts,
Yeah. Sounds a lot worse without the double entendre.
right? He's like, oh,
Yeah.
that can't anger him. What would piss him off is if I brought up some strange spirit
Yeah.
that she had to put down in her bed, and
Yeah. And they're like, wait, where'd you come up with that? And he's like, oh, just one of those things that happens.
it's like that were some spite, but like that would be very that would create spite. That would be very spiteful. That would make him angry. But my
Yeah.
invocation is fair and honest. Like, I'm just saying that he's head over heels in love.
Yeah.
And I only say her name, but to conjure him. I'm not casting any spell on her. I'm using her name to cast a spell on Romeo
Right.
to make
Yeah.
him appear out of thin air.
Yeah. Just like the cat biscuits again.
Yeah.
Great. So then Benvolio says, come, he hath hid himself among these trees to be consorted with the humorous night. Blind is his love, and best befits the dark. So when they say humorous, does it also mean humorous like we think it now to them, or is it only the humors they're referring to?
It's the humors, meaning that there's this night that's full of strong emotions,
Yeah.
strong human desires.
Blind is his love and best befits. What does he mean by best befits the dark? Like it's good that it's nighttime while this is happening?
Kind of. In a way, I feel like this is kind of giving into Mercutio a bit and
Right.
adding to his making fun of Romeo a little.
Oh, okay.
But Benvolio would never do that like in a mean way.
No.
He's just kind of accepting that Mercutio, like, hey, that was a good one,
Yeah. Gotta give him props.
It's like, but on one hand, he's saying like his love is blind. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
His love is blind, so it makes sense that he's following it in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
But on the
Oh,
other
yeah,
hand,
that
he's
is,
kind of giving into Mercutio and agreeing, fine, I'll make fun of him a little bit.
Yeah, you make a good
He's a
point.
bumbling moron who doesn't know what he's doing.
It feels sometimes a little bit like only I'm allowed to make fun of my little brother, but then it's like, but that was a good one.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Love it.
They're cousins, but yeah.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah. So then what does Mercutio say?
If love be blind, love cannot hit the mark. Now will he sit under a medlar tree and wish his mistress were that kind of fruit, as maids call medlars when they laugh alone. So that's saying, he won't find his love, so he's just going to sit under a tree and hope that it grows on the tree and falls in his lap.
Right. I get it. Wish that his mistress thing. Yeah.
And I think that the fruit of the medlar tree, and I don't know what it is, but
Yeah,
I remember there being some kind of reference to female anatomy.
Ah, right, yep.
And I know that people do have a tendency to name foods after things they look like body parts.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And especially in olden times, people were much more, because like farmers, they watched animals have sex every day. Like children knew about sex. There was no conversation about the birds and the bees. The kids watched the donkeys screw each other, So, having common things that you see every day that are named after those is not so out of place.
No, not at all.
And it's saying that he's hoping that her lady bits will just fall into his lap.
I think there's even some photography projects where if you split certain fruit in half, they do kind of look like, the sort of cross section looks a bit like lady parts from the front, I think.
Oh yeah, yes, I've definitely seen images of those online.
Don't ask why we know what the
on social media, not those like websites where people go to just for that. But
yeah, no, it's artistic. It's artistic.
Yeah, joke images where if you've seen it, you know that it's similar. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Romeo, that she were. Like, hey, buddy, I wish for your sake that were the case. Oh, that she were an open arse, and thou a popper and pear. And popper and pear, I don't know if that's a kind of pear.
Yeah.
Or if it's just a joke from the words pop her in.
Wow, so that wordplay even back then would have been almost kind of, it would have worked even back then kind of with their version of English.
Yes.
Wow. Popper and pear. Seeing etc. is wild as well.
And in open arse, I feel like there ought to be a meaning for that I'm missing. Some very
Sounds like
common
an entendre,
thing that like British people might say.
Yeah.
Because if it's just, body imagery, I think that's pretty explicit.
Yeah. It seems a bit full on. Yeah.
In open arms, holy shit,
Yeah.
But obviously it means that as well.
Yeah.
But I feel there's got to be another meaning that is something very common. In open arts, it's probably like a simpleton or the village drunk or something like that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a very common idiom.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And Romeo, good night. I'll to my truckle bed. This field bed is too cold for me to sleep. Come, shall we go?
So what was a truckle bed?
It's a trundle bed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a kind of bed, yeah. And he's saying, rather than staying out and drink all night and sleeping here where we pass out drunk.
Yeah.
And that's implying that he's like kind of a party animal. He does do that sometimes.
Yeah.
In fact, if Romeo wasn't such a frickin', sap and a lovebird, they would party all night.
Yeah.
And fall asleep on the field bed.
Oh, so he means literally field as in like the ground?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Is it a thing in the States for people to fall asleep in wheelbarrows when they're drinking?
Not that I'm aware of.
Interesting.
But I believe it did used to be customary for bars to use wheelbarrows to deliver patrons home after they had drunk themselves into a stupor.
Amazing. I love it.
Uh,
So then Benvolio says, "Go then, for 'tis in vain to seek him here that he means not to be found." And then it says, "Excellent." So they're kind of giving up on finding Romeo.
yeah, Benvolio's like, yeah, you're right. We're not going to conjure him.
Yeah, he's run off. And that's kind of the end of the scene. We're sitting at about 42 minutes now, and that's pretty much the perfect length of an episode. So shall we just wrap it there, and then we'll continue with whoever my next guest is for the next scene? Is that cool with you?
Okay, great. I mean, that does take some weight off my chest of having to speak as
Yes.
an expert on the most famous scene ever staged.
Yes, indeed. As much as I'm sure we'd enjoy hearing your thoughts on it, I think
It is
we
such
covered.
a great scene, though. Honestly, it's
I'm
the
looking forward to it.
interplay of where the characters are at and how they interact. It's so much fun.
Yeah,
There's
and they're both so
when it's
witty, I
staged.
think.
Okay, so
Well,
when that scene is staged, um, I've seen a lot of modern versions of it that are just very straightforward and just focusing on the love aspect of what's going on.
yeah,
But I think the scene actually has a lot more things at play.
yeah,
There's a word that kind of means opposites that I'm looking for here. But
juxtaposition.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some really amazing juxtaposition in the next scene.
hmm
And it's so much fun to play with, I think, in terms of
What kind of
stagecraft and staging actors.
what kind of things would that be? Because I think everyone's vaguely familiar with it. So we're not going to be prematurely spoiling anyone the balcony scene. But
True, yeah. Well,
what kind of things would you stage? Yeah.
it's basically based around the two main characters of the scene. Well, the only two. I mean, the nurse is kind of in there, but you don't see her. So it's
Yeah.
the two characters of the scene. They're doing a scene for most of the scene with each other by themselves.
Hmm.
And so that's a juxtaposition. The ways in which they relate to each other before, while Romeo's still eavesdropping or whatever, they are relating to ideals of each other that don't actually exist. Like young people do when they fall in love, and that's
Yeah.
what they're responding to and interacting with, and and then there's some, I'll let the next person get to that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a
Well,
very
no,
fun thing.
that's still cool to hear about. Like, just I think what's been so fascinating about doing this whole series of the podcast is that, like, the script is great and the lines are great, but then, like, there's just so much else that comes along with it, and like the
Right?
different,
Like if
like
you
you
didn't know
say.
about the ape shows, those lines
Exactly.
would have seemed like not so great, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, just learning about, because it is still a physical production that people are putting on, so learning about things like the stage design and everything like that is just really fascinating too. So let's talk about you a little bit. I appreciate your time on the podcast, making some time for this. What is your history with Shakespeare? You were telling me off air that you've played Mercutio, but yeah, tell me a little bit more about
Yeah.
that.
So I'm an actor. I love the theater, and I always have. Um, I knew when I was a kid that I wanted to be a comedian and an actor. And I've literally started reading Shakespeare when I was like 13,
Wow.
just because I was so interested in theater.
hmm
And I've studied at Shakespeare and Company. I've performed in Shakespeare. It's always been a part of my life. And my primary area of expertise as a dramaturg is actually in Italian theatrical form,
Wow.
which Shakespeare actually mentions at several points, and there's no known history of how he would know about it, which I think is really cool.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is fascinating.
but the Italian form is called Commedia dell'arte, uh, comedy of the craft. Arte not meaning art, meaning craft. It's in artists in the old artisans guilds where craftsmen came to, people who work in one leather workers, for example, would have
Yep.
the leather workers art group or whatever they called it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So commedia dell'arte is the craft of comedy. It was the first ever professional theater companies in the history of the world were in this form.
Wow.
And
Wow.
they give us a lot of modern words in every language, but especially Western languages.
Yeah.
For example, the word zany.
Comes from.
Zany is an anglicization of zani,
Huh.
which is the Sicilian pronunciation of Johnny.
Huh.
And in the Commedia, Commedia was many parts of it were very class based, and it was a lot about interaction between masters and servants.
Mm-hmm.
And a generic servant was just referred to as Azani
Right.
because it's a very common name, and Sicilians are more poor than Venetians. And so,
Right.
if a Sicilian's coming to Venice, they're going to be a servant, right?
Mm.
And so Zani is the word zany in English. It means Sicilian servant. That's what it actually
Really?
means. Yeah.
At what
Or
point
that's
did
not
it
what it means.
sort
It's
of?
the origin of it. Yeah.
Yeah. At
And
what point
so
do you know when
Shakespeare at
it
time.
changed?
Sorry, what?
Do you know at what point it changed to mean like crazy and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, when the Commedia dell'arte became famous outside of Italy,
Oh, okay, right. Wow.
people started using the words. The word pants comes from Commedia. One of the
Huh.
characters, Pantalone, the traditional old miser character that we're all
Right.
familiar with. It's Mr. Burns in The Simpsons was intentionally modeled after this character. Um, the original Pantalone wore red tights
Uh-huh.
that became associated with his character.
Right.
So now
Wow.
all different words for leggings in Western languages, especially Romance languages, are all based on that guy's name.
Wow.
And
That's
so
mad where these things
there's a
go, yeah.
particular line, I think it was in Twelfth Night, where one of the characters references base zanies.
Yeah.
Base zanies, base meaning basic.
Yeah.
He's basically calling people fools.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying you're like a simple zani.
Hmm.
You're some dumb and crazy fool.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Wow.
maybe because Commedia was very big in France and it got as far as Moscow. It was huge in Moscow.
Wow.
Like Commedia was like I said, it was the first professional theatrical style. So it was the
Yeah.
performance style of the day. Everybody copied it and learned from it. And so maybe that's how the words got over.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because Shakespeare is of the theater and he's clearly at the highest level in the theater, like yeah, Ben Jonson was poet laureate, but Shakespeare was higher caliber than Jonson, and
Yeah.
you'd think someone like that would know the theatrical terms and what they mean,
Yeah.
and the fact that he does make so many references to Commedia, I think he definitely had to know what it was.
He must have, yeah.
And it's
I
possible
guess.
he'd even seen it. Like normally, you know, acrobats from Italy who are involved with the Commedia would make their way over to perform in the court of royalty in England, right?
Yeah.
And Shakespeare was a commoner, but there are reasons to believe he did have connections to nobility.
Right. Right.
And so it's possible he had seen that and learned about it from those people.
Yeah.
But I love to imagine what it would be like if he had seen an actual full Commedia performance.
Yeah. I mean, it's not impossible that he did, I suppose, right? Or would it have been only for the
Well,
royals?
there's no records of entire Commedia troops making it all the way to England.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So it's very possible that he didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I like to think that maybe he did. It's much more interesting to think about, you know?
Yeah, I love that thought. I like that headcanon you've got there.
And yeah, so that's my particular area of expertise. There's a book out that I think only PhD students in theater buy called Commedia dell'arte in the Asia Pacific, in which
Oh,
I wrote the
cool.
chapter on Thailand.
Did you?
Yeah, published by Routledge, no
Awesome.
less.
Very cool. I'll
Which,
see if I can.
if
Is it the
you
kind of
have
thing
a
they can buy?
master's or a doctorate in anything related to theater, you know Routledge. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of a bragging point for me there.
Well, one of my first few guests, Jeff, he's a comic from Christchurch. He studied Shakespeare at university, so I'll ask if he's read that book the next time I have him on, and if he
Whoa,
has,
cool.
then I'll drop your name.
Wonderful. Be like,
No,
yeah, I
magnificent.
know the guy who wrote the chapter on Thailand.
Hell yeah. So
But
then,
yeah, so because of I think the similarity in histories and the connectedness there, uh, I do like to relate the two to each other, even if there is no relation, even if I'm just creating that in my mind.
yeah, yeah.
And so I think because of that, Shakespeare also has a very special place in my heart. And like I said, I've just always loved it and enjoyed it.
Oh, wonderful. So then some questions about you as an actor. Who is Mercutio your favorite character you've played of Shakespeare's?
Of Shakespeare, I'm gonna have to say Bottom from Midsummer's Night's Dream was my favorite.
Who was I have seen it a long time ago. Who's Bottom again?
So Bottom was the co-director of the troupe of actors living in the woods.
Yep. Okay. Yep. I'm with you.
Yeah, and he's the one who got turned into the donkey.
Oh, he's the donkey. Okay. Yep. 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 I know exactly who that
And
is.
when I got to do this play, for one, I got to make a donkey head that I wore.
Oh, cool.
Now, as I'm a Commedia dell'arte has masks that the characters
Uh-huh.
wear
Yeah.
traditionally. There's modern versions that don't, but traditionally it does. And so I'm a mask maker as well.
Awesome.
And so to be able to make an entire donkey head that I then wore in a production was just really special in of itself, you know?
That's great. Yeah, I love it.
And so I
Do
love
you
that. And the shape of the donkey, by the way, really amplified my voice. It was so much fun to use. But
really?
I think my favorite thing about that was one little bit that I improvised. I didn't improvise the text. I didn't do that because you can't improvise Shakespeare
Yeah.
textually. But I
Yeah.
improvised the meaning of some of the text.
Right.
Was we were very understaffed.
Uh-huh.
And we made this production of Midsummer's Night with, I think it was about just a handful of actors, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and it's well known that in Shakespeare's time, that members of his troupe would travel to other parts of England and perform these shows there,
Hmm.
even though only as many as three of them, I think, were known to have gone at one time.
Right.
So, well, how do you perform a play with a cast of 20 people with only three people?
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to adapt, right?
Yeah.
And so I wonder if what happened back then was very similar to what happened with me.
Yeah.
And maybe I was not the first person to improvise this meaning. But so
Uh-huh.
as Bottom is doing this play, there's a lion in it, and there's the moon. And so in the play, um, when I mentioned the moon, I gave a flashlight to a member of the audience.
Ah.
And I think maybe they did that. Maybe they gave someone a lantern with a way to block the light and unblock it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And if I'm not going to get the text exactly right, so for those of you purists listening, please forgive me. But the line was something to the effect of, "Oh, I thank thee, moon, for thy guiding light. I thank thee, moon, that doth shine so bright."
Mm-hmm.
And so when I did this line, I'm wandering around on stage in the dark, and
Yeah.
I say, "I thank thee, moon, for thy guiding light." And then I pause and I look
Yeah.
at the guy with the flashlight like I'm really frustrated, and I go, "Oh, moon, I thank thee now." And after I say now, I pause and he turns it on.
Yeah.
And I say, for that doth shine so bright.
Yeah. That's
And the audience
fantastic.
just erupts in laughter. And
That's
I
so
wonder,
good.
I wonder if they did that exactly the same way, you know?
They may well have, yeah. That's a good way to save on costs.
And right? And maybe it was recorded that way because they'd known that it had been done to outside of London audiences to great results when they did that.
Yeah,
Because
that is fascinating.
the scripts we have from Shakespeare, most of them are not complete manuscripts. They're bits
Right.
and pieces. Some of them are just lines that actors remembered, you know?
Yeah.
So that could be what that's from. And because that happened, and I did not plan for it to happen, I was
Yeah.
just going to do the line as straightforward poetry.
Yeah.
And then when that happened, I was so proud of myself.
That is
That was
great, yeah.
over a decade ago, and I'm still proud of myself. Listen to me,
Still
you
riding
know?
the high, yeah, that's brilliant. A good friend of mine who was on an earlier version of this podcast, he put together a sort of like a retelling of the Odyssey. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So it was with 3 people, and I think they had a couple of stagehands. So most of the actors were playing multiple characters, and for the suitors of Penelope, they kind of used the audience that were watching. It was an outdoor theater thing, and we were all kind of just sitting there on camping chairs and picnic setups and stuff. And so, in the scene where he has to kill all of Penelope's suitors, they were, pretending to shoot arrows into the crowd and pointing at people, and they would, clutch their chest and fall down and all that kind of thing. It was really clever. So, I mean, you might have tapped into something really
Right.
sort
And
of
that kind of
ancestral there.
interaction makes it more fun.
So much fun.
Like, have you heard about what break a leg means?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I've got to share this.
Please.
So, theatrical audiences were not a bunch of, pretentious, stuffy nosed
No.
socialites like people think of them being today.
Mm-hmm.
No, these were the commoners. These
Mm.
were poor people that, lived in piles of dung.
Mm.
Like, not literally, it's not the four Yorkshire men here, but they lived on the farm. They did dirty things. They weren't educated. They
Yeah.
enjoyed spectacle that was vibrant and interactive and larger than life.
Yeah.
And so if people had to perform at these places where you have ape conjurers vying for people's attention, you need to do things to draw the audience in, and maybe incorporating them into something does help with that.
Yeah, I think
Now,
so.
break a leg, that actually comes from the seating in theaters at the time
Right.
were long wooden benches, very much like church pews,
Uh-huh.
and the theaters were open air.
Yeah.
So these long wooden benches have been rained on a lot,
Yeah.
and the wood's been warped. And when an audience is really rowdy, which is what happens if you're really getting them involved and
Mm-hmm.
riling up their passions,
Yeah.
um, the leg of one of these benches is bound to break.
Right.
And when it does, every single person sitting on that bench, they will all fall on top of each other in the direction of the broken leg.
Yeah.
And then as
Yeah.
an actor, whatever you do next, if you acknowledge that in a funny way, however obvious or however brilliant you do it,
Uh-huh.
either way, it's going to get an amazing reaction from the audience. They're going to love it.
Wow.
Breaking a leg is the best thing that can happen to
Yeah.
you when you're on stage.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. Shit. So then, do you have a character that you would like to play in Shakespeare that you haven't had the chance to?
Ooh. I mean, I am an actor,
Mm-hmm.
so technically speaking, I want to play all the characters, especially anything I haven't played.
Yeah.
But I think I would like to play Caliban from The Tempest.
That's not one I'm familiar with. Is there any particular reason that Caliban stands out to you?
Yeah. I, I'm really drawn into how he's kind of treated as subhuman,
Right, okay.
and how he's the object of all these manipulative magical powers outside of his control.
Right, right.
And I'm very fascinated with the fantastical in theater as it is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really, really a great part.
Okay, I'll have to read up on that when
But I
I've
mean,
just got the wiki.
honestly, I'd like to play everything. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Would
I
you
want
ever
to play Mark
consider
Anthony. I want to play
love Mark Anthony?
right, uh, and any part in Twelfth Night. I think that's probably my favorite play.
I'm with you.
But any part in that would be fun.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Brilliant. So, plugs. What kind of social media? Where can people find more of you online if they would like to check out what you're up to over in Thailand?
Okay. Well, if you speak Thai, definitely check out my TikTok page.
Yes, do that. If
Johnny
you
Milk.
send me the link. I'll chuck it in the notes.
You might actually have some Thai speakers. I once did a little performance for somebody who had translated Hamlet into Thai and was having his
That's
book
cool.
release. And I did a performance at the book release,
Awesome.
doing comedy in Thai about Shakespeare. It was so cool.
That's wild. I've recently been because doing this project, I've sort of put the call out to Shakespearean actors and everything, and I've been put in touch with a guy who's actually from my hometown, but he's living in Hong Kong doing Shakespeare for like you like kind of young children to perform it to build up their confidence in speaking English. So it's
That's really cool. Yeah, but yeah. So if
yeah,
you want to see, if you love Thailand and speak any Thai, or if you just want to see a very fat, round-eyed, white-faced guy speaking in a tonal Asian language, you can check out Johnny Mokjok. That's JONNY MOKJOK.
yep,
And that's across TikTok, YouTube are the big ones for me. And then I do have an English language Facebook and Instagram.
yep.
My Instagram is Jonathan _Samson comedian, because just my name, Jonathan Samson, was already taken. How annoying is that?
Yeah, I had that problem too. Yeah,
And so now, because comedian's part of my name, I'm not allowed to post things that aren't funny anymore, which
yeah.
is
Well, that
not
works out
fair,
right then.
right? I had a really momentous life event. Screw you, make us laugh, funny boy.
Yeah.
And then on Facebook, it's Jonathan Samson Comedy. Jonathan is Jon, no H there. JONATHAN, Samson, SAMSON. And
Fantastic.
yeah, you can see me on Netflix. There was a really successful Thai movie, first Netflix movie in the Isan language, which is the northeastern dialect of Thai, that I was in. And for the English language dub, I dubbed my own character.
Hell
The
yeah.
movie is The Murderer, and it's a comedy murder mystery. You can see that on Netflix. I'm in a few other things on Netflix. I'm in quite a few others, but that's the only one that I think has an English language dub.
Uh-huh.
If you're Irish, check out season 4, episode 4 of Hardy Bucks.
Ah.
Or even if you're not Irish, you want to see what an Irish comedy show looks like. It's called
Yeah,
Hardy
check it out.
Bucks. I'm in season 4, episode 4. I was actually the Bangkok unit director for that.
Cool.
And so naturally, I cast myself in it.
Yeah, of course.
There was only 2 scenes shot in Bangkok. And they only used one of them. It was the scene they used and an alternate in case they decided to use the alternate.
Right.
But since they didn't have, the budget to fly their whole crew to Thailand to shoot one scene, they just hired me to do it.
That's awesome.
And so there's that. There's other various things here and there in English, but I think just follow my social for now. I do stand-up comedy in English. I'm the founder of the English language comedy scene in Bangkok. or I'm the only remaining founder anyway. I killed the others. No, just kidding.
You're like the Time Lord. You're the last Time Lord.
There can be only one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So yeah, look out for my comedy. I hope you all enjoy it.
Well, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with me. It was a lot of fun. I learned heaps about the scene and the character. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Taylor, and I hope everyone has a greater appreciation for Mercutio as well now.
Hell yeah. So that brings us to the end of another episode of Line by Line. Thank you so much for listening, and if you've enjoyed it, please tell your theatre-loving friends about it. Give us a share on social media, and most importantly, leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Good Pods, or whatever your favourite podcatcher is. Come back next week, same time, same place for another episode of Line by Line. To quote the bard himself, parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say goodnight till it be next week. Thank you for listening.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.